Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into this afternoon edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. In today's episode, we'll do a deep dive into the Capitals' latest practice lines, the emotional weight of Ovechkin versus Crosby, playoff stakes against Pittsburgh, and the shocking John Carlson hat trick with Anaheim. I'll have a full breakdown of line chemistry, injuries, and what it all means for the Caps' postseason hope. So let's get into it right here. So here's the thing right off the top. This isn't the best lines practice. This is a statement lineup from Spencer Carberry. That this lineup isn't about balance, it is about identity. And you look at it, Ovechkin, Strome, Beauvillier, line 1, the Protas brothers with Tom Wilson on line 2, and Dubois buried in the middle 6. A legit heavyweight fourth line. Like, this is not finesse hockey. This is where a bigger than you deal with it. And I keep coming back to that 700-pound line idea with the Protas brothers and Wilson. You know, that's not just a fun quote. That is a playoff identity. Ovechkin saying, quote, "I think it's going to be the heaviest line in the league. Good luck," unquote. That, it is at least worth a shot, right? And what we saw in the first game with Lil Pro on the line was encouraging. And, actually, I love it. I love those kind of storylines because the Caps are out of time trying to figure things out. This is a team with 3 games left saying, this is it. Take it or leave it. And with those 3 games, chasing the Metro spot, and Carberry's basically saying, quote, "We're not going to outskill teams. We're going to outlast them." And yeah, you can question putting Dubois on that third line, but maybe that's the point. You're forcing him to drive play, not ride it. And then defensively, Faravari Sandin, Chikrin TVR, and Hudson Roy. It's fine. It's not elite, but it's structured. And the whole thing feels like a coach saying, all right, guys, no more experimenting. This is who we are. And honestly, it might be the first time all year that it's been that clear. All right, so coming up here after the break, Ovechkin versus Crosby still defines everything. I'll discuss straight ahead. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cause businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communication. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. Listen, the communication at my job before was a mess until we added Quo, and the thing that I loved about it, everything lives in one clean thread, calls, texts, and voicemails. The whole team sees the conversation so nothing falls through the cracks. Make this the season that no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/LockedOnNHL. That is QUO.com/LockedOnNHL. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. All right, welcome back into this afternoon edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So one of the biggest storylines going into the weekend games is Ovechkin versus Crosby. Is this it? Is this the last time you see those two, future All-Stars, Hall of Famers, I guess is what I'm going to say. They're already All-Stars. Future Hall of Famers. Is this going to be the last time? Because let's be real here for a second. This weekend, it's not just about points. It's about history. Sidney Crosby versus Alex Ovechkin one more time, right? Well, maybe. And Ovi said it perfectly, saying, quote, "It's history, what we have for 20 years. It gave me more to think about and get ready for it," unquote. And, that line hit because, you take a look at it. This isn't just rivalry hype anymore. This is reflection. And then Wilson goes even further, quote, "There will never be Ovi and Crosby ever again," unquote. So that's not even a debate. That's the truth, because what made this rivalry insane, it wasn't just talent. It was timing. 2 generational players, 2 franchises colliding into the playoffs, 2 completely different personalities. Ovi's equals chaos, emotion, and goals, and Crosby equals precision, control, and legacy. And now we're watching the final chapters. And here's the part, that nobody's saying loud enough. This rivalry, well, is still carrying the emotional weight of these teams, because when the Caps play the Pens, they don't look tired. They don't look eliminated. They look alive. And that matters heading into a must-win situation for the Capitals because, mathematically the Caps need help. But emotionally, this is one matchup that can override all of that. And if you're asking, do they have one last push in them? It probably starts here with 8 versus 87 one more time. All right, so coming up here after the break, the playoff path is brutal, but still real. I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this afternoon edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. So here's where everything gets messy, right? The Caps are sitting at 89 points, chasing the Flyers with 92, the Islanders with 91, and the Blue Jackets with 90. And the second wild card basically gone. So it's Metro or bust, baby. And here's the path. Pittsburgh, Columbus. That is the docket. That is what is on deck for the Capitals. So let's just say that's not just difficult. It's, in a lot of ways, insane. But here's the twist. Pittsburgh has already clinched, which means they might not care. But I have a hunch to believe that they would still love to rub salt into the wounds of the Capitals as that rivalry goes way back and get one last laugh about eliminating the Capitals. So here's where things get interesting, because if the Caps win out, they hit 95 points and they own the tiebreakers. So suddenly we're scoreboard watching again. You're rooting for chaos. And honestly, that fits this team. But before we wrap here, we got to talk about this because it is absolutely wild. To all the people that said, why trade number 74? Why John Carlson? Well, John Carlson leaves the Caps and immediately scores a hat trick with Anaheim. I say immediately, kind of sarcastically, after 1,143 games without one. Like, come on, really? It's obviously never had one, so it's pretty exciting, said Carlson. And he does it in 13 games with the Ducks, the most former Capital Energy thing ever. But it also kind of sums this season. Things that should have happened here didn't. And now the Capitals are left chasing something that feels just out of reach. But if they can beat Pittsburgh, if this thing turns into the last Ovi versus Crosby moment, then suddenly, this whole thing feels possible again. So that's dangerous, but hopes in April for this team, that's what gets weird. And honestly, I think we're heading there. So if you want must-see TV, one last ride, Ovechkin versus Crosby, this is it. It very well could be it. And I think what it is going to do is bring out the absolute best of both teams. That, you even subtract the Ovechkin Crosby thing and what could be Ovi's last season with the Capitals. It's just the bad blood that has gone on back and forth between these teams for years. One team eliminating another and the other eliminating the other team. That, that's where I'm at. That a lot of the talking heads said, Pittsburgh might not have their big guns out there. They might rest them. I kind of have a hunch that is not going to be the case. Like I said earlier, I think they would love nothing than to be the team to eliminate the Capitals. So a lot of fun storylines to follow this weekend. And listen, 3 games left. So, if you were someone that was like, I don't even need to watch the remainder of the season, I think you need to muster interest in what could be, if nothing else, Ovechkin's last ride, or maybe the last hope of doing something unthinkable, and that's making it to the playoffs. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this afternoon edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I will talk to you again next time.